All right, so hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
That's good. So, you sent me the thread in which you gave a little bit of backstory, and I forgot to read it.
Yeah. Um, so I hadn't actually been planning on posting a thread like that. It's just one day, just out of the blue, I see Audio pings me in a thread, and for a while, then Audio had me blocked. But then I find that he's unblocked me. He pings me in a thread saying that he's coming out as having groomed me, and you know. I then have to make like a very long response thread to that and like clarify some things and stuff. And then several months later, I find out that he's murdered someone, which is not very pleasant. Mm.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
But
Like getting call out. It's like a reverse call out post, but it's like you still have
y-
to deal with the aftermath.
yeah, it's like a confession post basically.
Yeah.
And I feel like in some sense he was being too harsh to himself in the post.
Okay.
Or rather he was not phrasing things the way I would have. Um, I remained silent, and like didn't really talk about it to my relationship with him to anyone until then because like I told him I wouldn't. But I
Mm-hmm.
took that as like implicit permission to talk about it,
Yeah.
which is useful now because of the aforementioned murder. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. So let's just like start at the very beginning then. What is your first I guess like the first time you kind of heard or like knew about or had any contact with Adair or any sort of Zizians, I suppose.
so that would have been in 2023,
Okay.
uh, about March 2023. Um, I was reading this fiction called Project Lawful, uh, and that was at the time Eliezer Yudkowsky's in progress fiction, and he had a Discord server for it, which he linked to in the fic itself. So I joined the Discord server Eliezer fic, and I talked there for a while. I'd been like following the rationalist community for a while, but I'd never really talked to anyone that was part of it, like until then. And I was pretty excited to find a lot of people who had the same cultural context that I did. Um, and so I would just hang out there and talk. And out of the blue, I see a DM from Audio. Let's see. Let me scroll back to the beginning. Or actually, let me just open up my DM archive, which lets me. Uh, I archived all of my DMs with him after uh, uh, hearing the
Mm-hmm.
news, but he already deleted a lot of them a long time ago. And
And
his
how
first messages,
and really quick, how old were you in 23 at this time?
I was 17 at the time.
Okay.
I believe when he messaged me, he was 20, and he quickly turned 21 uh, in like a month. I don't remember his exact birth date.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. So he messages me after because he liked one of the messages I sent in Eliezer fic. And I basically told him about my background and stuff. From what I've heard, this is not uncommon behavior for him. He would message a lot of people out of the blue and talk to them and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I have some of the first few messages from him, but he deleted uh most of them.
Okay. Is this something you're wanting to like include on the podcast that we can just put it in a
Uh,
post or how do you?
I can send it to you, I guess.
I mean, it's up to you. You know, it's not obvious. It would be obviously it'd be kind of personal. So I was wondering if you were looking it up to sort of help refresh your memory, or looking it up because you wanted to like read it aloud, or like have it on the record, or
Sure. Okay. So the first message he sent was, "Hi, what pronouns do you use? Colon D." He asked me if he could hug me, and I said yes. Uh, he asked me about myself. I said, "Yeah, I'm a 17-year-old Asian trans femme minor." I talked about how I had an abusive relationship with my parents at the time.
mm,
Some stuff I was into, what my interests were, etc., etc.
okay.
Uh, I was very suicidal at the time, and I mentioned in my thread, this is all public information. I mentioned in my thread that Autumn may have contributed to saving my life, um, because it basically bribed me with a $9,000 donation to the Against Malaria Foundation to stay alive. Uh,
Wait, you said Autumn, as in Adrusi, bribed you, or
no, Adair,
Adair?
Adair.
Okay, so he bribed you
Uh,
to stay alive with a
yes.
$9,000 donation to the
He
malaria.
has like I'm I don't remember exactly, but I think he has like $1 million in the trust fund or something.
Really?
Uh, yeah. And I have no idea if he actually did it. He said he would do it sometime within the next 10 years. So I don't know if he actually did it or not.
Uh huh.
But certainly I'm alive nonetheless. So
Hmm. Which is interesting because in 23 he was trying to raise money via crypto to bail Ziz out of jail, but like you know
indeed.
the bail was like reduced in like to like $50,000 in February. So
So my understanding is that he didn't have access to all the money in his trust fund.
right,
And
okay.
in fact, he said I was not aware of this until recently that he was fundraising for Ziz's bail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Apparently, a bunch of my other friends knew, but not me. Uh, but he did say that the reason he put like a long delay on it was because that he had more immediate things that he might want to do with his money, and that he uh and so um and if he was fundraising for Ziz's bail at the time, that makes sense, especially since again he doesn't have access to all the money in his trust fund right away.
Okay. Right. But okay. Well, I mean, I'm glad you're alive.
I think you can. I am too.
Right. So so you start messaging, and right off the bat he knows you're 17 and he's 20, which what state was this in, I guess?
We were online. I was in California, and I believe he was in Oxford at the time.
Okay.
Although I don't remember very clearly.
Yeah. I knew he went to
Uh,
Oxford, I think, but he also, I think, maybe lived in Washington. So, there's, at least under California law, that would have been illegal, I think. So, and he kind of
yes, but
knew.
not like enforceably illegal. Not like enforceably illegal. I don't think anybody really enforces relationships like that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to, I guess I'm just trying to give context without judging whether that kind of age gap is, you know,
Yes.
moral or not, because that's not really my place to tell people what to think. But, so, okay. So, you guys were talking, and the was the suicidal and the bribe to stay alive, was that the first thing that you guys talked about, like what, like
No, that
earlier
wasn't the
on?
first thing to talk. We talked about that was pretty early on in our relationship, but not like immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but he was really nice to me, and I developed a crush on him. And yeah, we started dating. Actually, um, I mentioned in my post that I've mentioned a few times that he was grooming me. This was actually because during our relationship, he described it as grooming. I said I was worried about grooming, and he said it's totally grooming, and you should think of it that way.
s- I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but oh my god. Okay.
For context, I believe that he was trying to flirt with me. Uh,
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so he was like, "I am grooming you." You're like, "I'm worried about getting groomed," and you're like, and he's like, "I am grooming you. This is a grooming situation.
yes,
This is what I
essentially.
am. I am breaking the law." And it's like, okay, I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
Uh, he was also dating Milo at this time. Uh, I, I'm just going through all of this, and in retrospect, there were many red flags. Uh,
Okay.
but he was dating Milo at the time. He's as are a lot of rationalists. He was polyamorous, but
Mm-hmm.
he didn't like his partners being polyamorous. Um,
Okay.
but
Yeah, you know,
he
the more I learn about this guy, I think he's just not cool. This
a
guy
lot of
is just
people
he's just not my kind of guy.
a lot of people had that impression at the time as well. Uh, but he was nice to me at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we had a group chat together, with me, Milo, and Aldair, where we talked a lot. Unfortunately, I was kicked from the group chat, and I no longer have access to it, which means that the majority of my messages are gone. And he also deleted most of the messages from our DMs. Uh,
Mm-hmm. So so it just sort of during your correspondence, it's kind of started off fairly early with the talk about suicidality and bribing you to stay alive, and then it sort of moved on where he was like, "I am grooming you."
no, that was the grooming came before the bribing.
Okay,
We were dating before he bribed me, I think.
okay. So you guys, so things were sort of like of that romantic slash sexual nature, like pretty early on.
Pretty early on, yes.
Okay,
I had a crush on him pretty early on.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, so then you know, as things move along, did you guys ever meet up in person or anything? Or
We did not. I was living at my parents with my parents at the time, and I had mostly drifted apart from him by the time I stopped living with my parents and had the
mm-hmm.
ability to move out. There was like kind of like a phase shift at some point, I observed, where he disappeared for a few days. And well, I don't remember if he disappeared, but like he one day he said he had been reading a lot of stuff and processing a bunch of info hazards, and then his personality changed pretty rapidly. Uh, if you don't know, Ziz, on her website says she is against BDSM, and
Hmm.
for a while this was something that Otto disagreed with, and then he changed his mind, and he also started acting like a jerk to pretty much everybody, including
Mm-hmm.
me. We got into a lot of arguments, and basically after that we drifted apart and uh stopped talking. For a while I was worried it was just me, but I talked to a bunch of other people who knew him at the time and said that they said that uh most people didn't like him even originally, but like some people did like him originally and then they stopped liking him and said, you know, yeah.
Do you remember about when this is?
No, I have no recollection, unfortunately. I can try to track down
Yeah.
I remember I talked with someone about it. I don't know if they
Mm-hmm.
want to name me, but the
We can
time,
we don't have to you don't have to answer that on the air, but if you want to like go through your old DMs and so we can kind of put a date to this because that does sound so when you said he was like he read a lot of info hazards and then he was suddenly now he's like kind of a jerk and also more against BDSM. Was that like it sounds a lot like he started kind of getting more heavily into Zizianism. Do you know if
yes,
that's like if we can like confirm that or
on the air, you want me to confirm that he started getting more into Zizianism
no, I mean
or
just
what?
like that it's the this sort of like this mood shift, like this sort of change in kind of how he was behaving where he was said he was getting into a lot of info hazards like are you sure that that's like related to Zizianism? 'Cause it sounds like it, but
Yes, I'm pretty confident it was related to Zizianism, although I don't have like definitive proof or something. He was always a fan of Ziz, to be clear. He was always a pretty big Ziz fan from the time I knew him.
mm-hmm.
But considering that he Ziz seemed to be his main like source of this type of info hazardous knowledge, and that his opinions shifted to become more like Ziz's, I think it's a safe assumption that it was related to Ziz.
Okay. Yeah.
So Milo stayed with him, everybody else kind of drifted apart.
When you said
And
oh, stayed with him like emotionally, not physically speaking.
yes,
Right, okay.
I checked the date. The time I discussed this with someone was in September. When I discussed audio kind of becoming more of a jerk was in September. So it would have been
Okay.
around then.
So he kind of started acting like a weird jerk in around September of 23.
Yes.
That's also the
Uh
time where Teresa Youngblood started to kind of ghost a lot of people and kind of drop off the map. And also, like, the month after Ophelia was starting to do the same thing.
huh. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. But that makes a lot of sense if it
Yeah.
was like
Like,
coordinated.
and it's like 2 months
Uh
after Ophelia and Teresa moved to North Carolina. And they also had a box truck there and someone who the landlord identified as just quote unquote another man living with them. So
oh, wow. I knew he dropped out of Oxford. Uh I remember that pretty distinctly, but yeah, that explains a lot if it was around the same time.
but yeah, so the in terms of the one of the things I've been thinking a lot is about like what is considered a cult and whether you could consider Zizians a cult. I think that there's a lot of like a lot of the time the really common thing that is happening over and over again is people who start to kind of get more involved with Ziz or start living around Ziz or start getting really into Zizianism. At some point, they just kind of drop off the map and they stop contacting a lot of their even internet friends and like family. Like, it's like you could argue, okay, well, if you're, you're getting together with your internet friends and you decide your parents are abusers, then it's like, okay, well, you're going to not talk to your parents, obviously, or like,
Yeah,
you might move and
and
just, but like online friends, like even like Ophelia, before Ophelia was really in with Ziz, Ophelia literally like called Ziz and was or like messaged Ziz and was like, "Hey, I'm worried about Suri, someone who would be later revealed to be Suri, and like he or she, I think Suri's a he, but like Suri dropped off the map, and I'm really worried about him. And if you have information about like him, I will pay you for it." And Ziz is like, "I don't know anything," and at the time Suri was
mhm,
like living with her, so it's a
yeah.
it's like I don't know. It seems to be some sort of like paranoia or isolation or something, which leads people who are around Ziz to just totally drop contact with, even like people who would later go on to be Zizians.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, it's kind of I know people have who have been in contact like 3 weeks before the murder. I've heard audio like reached out to them, DM'd them one last time being like, "Hey, are you vegan yet?" And then yeah. That was like after like a year of not contacting them, he reaches out to them and asks that, and then the murder.
Yeah. Was do you think that like the ghosting of the internet community, do you know if that is for like vegan reasons? Like if they kind of believe that if you're not vegan, you're kind of not worth talking to?
Uh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It could be it could be partially related. That's for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I think also it's probably also for like operational security reasons. They don't want to reveal too much information.
True.
Uh,
Even in 2016, there was like correspondence where like Ziz talking with Maya Pasek is kind of like worried about info security and things like that. So
yeah.
it does seem like, although I think it might have been on like Maya's part, but it does seem like it's just sort of like a sort of a paranoid group, I suppose.
Well, they are on the run from the law, so
I mean, now, yeah, like now it's not paranoia; it's just like trying not to get caught. But
uh Ziz herself says according to Ziz, she says, since posting this, I have been tortured, survived 7 assassination attempts, 3 more attempts to
oh
do
yeah,
me permanent bodily harm, etc., etc. So, at least according to Ziz, this was in 2022, by the way. According to Ziz, she seems to believe that her life is in danger.
yeah,
Uh,
and you can interpret like the two attempts on her life to be like the landlord altercation and the protest if you're being generous. But that's just like two things. So
yes, and I don't know what the details of the incidents here are. One fascist recently renewed their public statement of hunting me. Hundreds more want me dead. 2 and 2/3 years later, and the danger to me only grows worse.
could be, I guess, interpreting Zizian's.info and or the Medium article. Not sure when the Medium
Could be,
article was
yes.
published, but yeah. Okay. So let's, I guess, let's get kind of get it right back to the I guess the timeline of events. So he kind of Adair kind of falls off the map in September of 23.
Yes.
When did he sort of confess to grooming you?
This was in November of 2024.
November
November
24.
8th.
Oh, right. Yeah, just a few months ago.
Yes. Milo also made a post back then, but it has since been deleted. But I still
Hmm.
have the records. Milo says, I also wanted to be public knowledge that I was complicit in Audio's abusive relationship with Celene. During the same time period, I was also in an abusive relationship with him. He has proven to me that the abuse was a mistake and I trust him. I vouch for him with my life.
This is also around. This is also the month that Adair and Teresa filed for a marriage.
Indeed, it is. It
Yeah,
was actually, yeah.
marriage certificate.
Uh,
Okay.
we had some speculation about whether or not it was for spousal privilege or something. Uh,
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's not clear whether they actually. There's no legal record to indicate they followed through with the marriage, and
indeed.
actually performed the marriage, but they filed for a marriage license. I don't know if what the legal distinction between that is. So.
But they were definitely in a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Adair described Milo as his pet. Uh, I believe that nowadays they are. I'm unsure, but based off of his disavowal of these sorts of dynamics, I assume they are on more equal terms these days, although they're also both in jail, so
True.
uh yes, indeed.
Okay.
Uh I know a bit of the background behind their relationship.
Okay.
Uh
If you want to talk about that.
yeah, so they grew up in Seattle together, right? Uh
Mm-hmm.
uh they went to this
And this is Adair
private
and
school
Teresa,
together.
right? Or
Yes, Audrey and Milo.
Or
Uh,
yeah, Milo. Milo is. Do you know if Teresa goes by he or she or?
I'm not sure what pronouns they go by
Okay.
this day. The people who were in contact with Milo most recently claim that the Zizian in their profile is correct.
Okay.
Uh,
Um. But yeah, so Adair and Milo met in Seattle.
in Seattle, they went to Lakeside School together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they, I know that like a bunch of former students claim they were never seen together. According to them in particular, Audio and Milo went to the same choir class together. Audio was fairly shy at the time. He said he would stand behind Milo and look at her thighs. Uh, yes, and
Hey,
so
hey,
at this
just
point,
to be just
Milo
for the public
was
record. No, I'm not even gonna go
yes,
there.
just for the public record, you were saying.
No, never mind. I was
Okay.
gonna make a joke and then I realized what situation I was in and thought better of it.
Indeed. Milo was still pre-transition at this time. Uh,
Mm.
y- uh, it, and gosh, I believe that Milo and Audio got into a relationship because Audio was nice to Milo and encouraged them to transition. Uh, he would call Milo a good boy and things like that, and basically support Milo's transition. But later on, since Otter is primarily attracted to women, he encouraged Milo to detransition and uh would frequently misgender them. I think Milo had a misgendering kink. And at some point, I know Milo basically largely detransitioned, started pretty much detransitioned, started going by she, her pronouns. And
This is
yeah,
not the first time I've heard this very specific story about those two people, so it's probably at least somewhat true, I suppose.
who else have you heard it from?
I don't remember. I just remember hearing it.
It might have literally just been through me.
It might
Um,
have.
because I have been in fact talking to some people about it.
Okay, okay.
Uh, but yeah. Uh, it is kind of messed up. Um, it's quite plausible to me that a sequence of events that could have happened was that like after uh after Audio stopped being into BDSM, he decided not to restrict Milo's transition, and that's why Milo retransitioned, took disease and zero pronouns, etc., etc. But I'm unsure of the details because I haven't talked to either of them for years.
Yeah.
Or not for years, but like I haven't not been like actively talking to them since 2023.
Mm-hmm. Um, Going on with the timeline, was there anything in between the his confession post and then the current events as they're sort of unfolding in the news today?
Uh, Not to me specifically. I've heard
Okay.
reports that I mentioned, I've heard reports that of other people talking to
Mm-hmm.
Audio and Milo. I was actually going to ask one of them about it, but I haven't gotten the chance to yet. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, with Audio and Milo's relationship, I've always got the impression that Audio was really dragging Milo along into all this other stuff. Like because Milo wasn't really a part of the rationalist community. It was Audio getting into the rationalist community, getting into Zizians, and then getting Milo into it.
Mm-hmm.
Audio wasn't actually vegan when I first met him. He became vegan shortly after, though.
Hmm. And when was the exact date that you started meeting him and getting involved? Oh, you March 23, right? Okay. So,
March 23rd.
right. So he became vegan shortly after. It does seem like Zizian influence if he was interested in getting Ziz out of bail at
March
that point.
27th, actually. March 27th.
Okay.
I think his reasoning beforehand was that he would be more effective if he could eat meat and other animal products and could be more effective at saving the world. But then he decided that it was better practice to uh, actually just be vegan, and he described it as like freeing for him to know that he was acting with his foe, like it, he was acting with good practice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Um. So the the thread about the grooming. Do we want to pull that up and kind of go over that?
You can do so, yeah. That would work for me.
Okay.
Adair says, I want to be public knowledge that I ERP'd with and emotionally abused at Toaster Lighting when she was 17 and I was 20 to 21. I thought it was wholesome BDSM and I was wrong. I'm sharing this because I realized that keeping abuse in the dark can only protect predators. I have not seen any signs that this was going to come to light another way if I did nothing, at least not anytime soon. I'm choosing to bring this to light myself. Celene was living with abusive parents and didn't have anyone she could rely on. I was looking for friends and messaged her. I thought that a lot of people were really into manipulation and abuse, and that for them, it was the best way to become close friends. So I tried to figure out if that was what Celene wanted. It seemed like it was, so I abused and manipulated her under the frame of a BDSM dynamic, which are all abusive to varying degrees. My headmate encouraged this, and I no longer trust it. The age difference didn't discourage me because in a better world, an age gap of 17 to 20/21 would not be problematic. But that's not the world we live in, and what I did was wrong, regardless of the age difference. The age difference only makes it worse. I am certain that sharing this is correct because whatever this brings, however, hinders my fight for good, was already determined when I made the mistake of using Celene, and there was nothing good can gain by hiding it. When he says, my headmate encouraged this and I no longer trust it, um, Adair has like an ontology that he uses to describe himself that he's made up
Mm-hmm.
of like he has like four different headmates basically. There's uh and Adair is like the system name kind of, but like it's not really like a traditional headmate system. It's like just
Right. And headmates
it,
refer to like multiple personalities.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like different like ways of thinking he has, as far as I can tell. He describes it as an ontology. We have a cute little ontology we use sometimes. We're in April, and then there's also September, August, and December in here. Uh,
Are those the names of the headmates, or is those the months you discussed it, or?
headmate names. Uh, how do I describe the personalities? September, as you can, their username is Blue September. September, he describes as mantic, or like the way he conceptualizes it is that September is good at being right and like figuring out like internal biases and stuff like that, and like focusing on truth seeking. Uh, April is like a April is kind of like childlike almost. Uh, and focuses purely on desire. December, like is I think his like altruistic and kind side, and August is his uh I don't know how to describe it, like scornful tyranny, kind of
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay. And do you want to talk?
authority,
So just re
cruelty, cruelty, yeah.
right.
Uh,
Um
I assume that the headmate he is referring to in the post is April. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a funny story, my current girlfriend is actually named April. Uh, it's it's
Oh, okay.
it's very it's very confusing. And but yeah, name collisions.
Mm-hmm. So with the in your thread a little bit, you talk a little bit about how you don't think that him um grooming you or having the sexual relationship with you was the bad part. Do you want to
Yes.
go a little bit into like what do you do think the bad part about it was?
Sure. Gosh, it's kind of painful.
Okay. We don't have
So
to talk about it if you don't want to.
I'm okay talking about it. I
Okay.
just yeah, and I've already talked about this like several months prior. I've talked about this like almost a year ago, uh,
Mm-hmm.
with some friends of mine. Uh, Adair was very good at making me feel special in a sense. He said that I was one of the like top 1,000 or top 10,000 m most important people, like most important candidates for saving the world. And like he did this really, frankly, I would say it was a bad analysis. Based off like how many people know what the important problems are, how many people are as intelligent as you, you know, how correlated are these? It's how many people care, etc., etc. Uh, and yeah. So like he was like it really is like a very standard grooming script, right? You know, you're s smart, you're special. I'm slightly specialer and smarter than you. You know, I can you should look up to me and learn from me and stuff, you know. And uh
Yeah.
in fact, I think at one point, Otter said that I could possibly be smarter than he was at my age. Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know how much of him like exaggerating how special I was like an attempt to uh get me not to kill myself. Because it's very plausible that it was an attempt not to get me not to, and it's very possible I would have without it. So I don't know if it was actually harmful in on net, but it certainly caused a lot of problems for me. Uh, in that it gave me like an unhealthy sense of obligation, kind of,
Hmm. Like how do you mean like an obligation to?
to save the world, to be good and to do the most good and help people and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
that's why I felt like for a long time I felt like that's why I had to stay alive for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I felt like, you know, I wanted to die and you know, but I felt like I couldn't do so without indirectly like giving up on saving people. And it was very unhealthy for me. Uh, there were a bunch of people, including I think Octavia, who you talked to earlier, who tried to
Mm-hmm.
help me with this and like to get me to not be like that, but they were not very successful.
Hmm.
Uh,
Um. Because I don't want to pry too much, I suppose, but I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Like I don't know. I kind of like I think if you just look at the idea of like okay, well, if someone believes that they're like special and important and capable of saving the world, I think that's generally considered to be at least like somewhat of a healthy thing, I think, right? Like, it seems like you don't want to have no self-esteem, and like maybe it might be
Well,
like.
yes, but I think this kind of uniqueness narrative can be harmful. Like, you are the only person who can do X. And not the only person, but like one of the only people. You are
Mhm.
incredibly like it creates a large pressure, I think, on people to
Mhm.
like feeling like they have to be a certain way. They have to do this. They have to do that.
Mhm. I guess it would also maybe like lean into like thoughts of like self-criticism.
Hmm.
Okay.
But yeah, uh, if you have a narrative in which you want to die and you're just staying alive so that you can save the world, it's not very good for your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. Bless you.
Sorry,
It's okay.
it was coughing actually, but yes.
Well, it did a good job of taking up the audio, so don't worry about it. Um, hmm. It is interesting how I feel like that kind of language or mindset does it doesn't seem far off from the sort of things that people tell people to try and like recruit them to like Zizianism to the extent that it's a group, right? Like the fact that like you're uniquely special and moral and concerned about the right topics. Um, I mean, I guess I can't pull up a quote off the top of my head, but it does seem to be in line with like, what Zizians think of other Zizians, right?
Uh, yes, but I also think that it's a kind of brainworm that is pretty prevalent in the general rationalist EA community. Uh,
Can you say more about that?
well, uh, AI safety, feeling like they're the only people who know the shape of the problems that are facing the world. People, everybody else, effective altruists think, oh, there's this whole thing where like, every $5,000 you spend on selfish things is another life that you could have saved that you're choosing not to, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just this huge weight of responsibility on their shoulders, that is pretty prevalent with the general rationalist community, but I would expect it's unusually bad for people with bad mental health, like me at the time, and people with and Zizians. Octavia compared me to Pasek once. Uh, it said that I was very much like uh Pasek, who, as you know, killed themselves um in something that was related to this, although I don't know how related.
Yeah.
Uh, and it said that the problems I was facing were very similar to the ones Pasek did.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you read Pasek or Maya's writing, and did you like agree with that assessment, or?
Uh, I've always felt, even before Octavia said that Pasek was kind of a kindred spirit. It expressed a lot of ideas I had come up with independently myself, and that were important on an emotional level to me. Uh, So I would say I agree with that assessment, and also Octavia would know better than me about Pasek.
Hmm. Okay. So, were you a vegan at the time when you were talking to Adair?
I was not.
Okay. So that's probably, I mean, if we had to guess why you weren't necessarily looked at as someone who might have been able to be recruited into the sort of Zizian crew, the
Well,
veganism.
you have to remember that Ade also wasn't Zizian originally.
True.
Uh, some of the people that he contacted about raising bail for Ziz were also not vegan. And more relevantly, Ade definitely discussed a lot of Zizian ideas with me. The first time he brought it up was quoting something to me when I was going through something. He quoted something from Ziz to me when I was going through like a mental health problem, and I wasn't sure what it was. I copied and pasted it. I asked him what it was, and he immediately deleted it. But since I had it in my clipboard, I went to Google it and I found Ziz's website. And Audio warned me that it was info hazardous.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Especially if he can't, the info hazard may have been what had driven Maya to commit suicide in part, at least.
perhaps. But also, I just feel like, and Octavia has also commented on this that Adair viewed Ziz as like some sort of almost religious figure to an extent, like a super genius who was right about everything. And he wasn't certain of this, but he said he assigned pretty significant probability that Ziz was right about basically everything, and he would like say Ziz would say X, Ziz would say blah Y to me during our discussions. And we got into a lot of arguments about Ziz, where he would bring up his Zizian theories to me, and I would be like, I don't buy it. It seems like, and like I did get like a lot of Zizian ideas from him, but
Mm-hmm.
I never fully bought into it. One thing he said to me was that, for example, uh, children children choose to traumatize themselves when they're young, and because they look into the future and they see, oh, if I traumatize myself, then I can pretend like I didn't know what I was doing. I can pretend I am an innocent. I can pretend that I when people are stupid in a way that benefits them by making it so that people can't assign responsibility to them. When people are stupid in a way that makes it impossible for people to blame them. Uh, Audio said that it was actually because they chose to make themselves stupid. Uh, because they performed solid enough induction, and that if you continue to assign responsibility to them anyways, then they would have never done so in the first place. And I was like, I don't buy it. I don't buy that humans perform solid enough induction like that. I don't believe that if they did, I don't believe that it would be so far reaching or in such or have such fine-grained detail, uh, and so on and so forth. And he had a bunch of ideas about entropy and stuff too. I can send the screenshots to you.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, that's I guess that is a theory. That is interesting. Um, huh. I guess that like, because I guess if you look at it from like, if you look like a traumatized person who isn't taking responsibility for themselves, and ask them, well, what game theoretic purpose does this serve? If every person is just like a mathematical strategy, then they're
yeah,
like, oh, they're just playing dumb so that they can get what they want. I guess, but really just seems to me to, I guess, illustrate the limits of thinking everything in a game theoretic way rather than like, because you arrive at a conclusion that's so obviously not true. I think the thing with Lauder is like from the very beginning, he was like pro Ziz and very much so, and respected her ideas a lot, and basically believed she was pretty much right about everything. And then, but there was still like a radical shift that happened in September. I guess it's when they moved in. Maybe. I mean, well, I don't know. Lauder was never living with any of these people, but it was like, I guess when Milo and Ophelia. moved to North Carolina and maybe started getting in touch with Ziz even more. So it's like I don't know, maybe he was like just corresponding, but Ziz didn't like trust him enough to be like inner circle ish, maybe, and then that
Yeah,
changed.
yeah, that's plausible. But also I think that like he just genuinely shifted in ideology over time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think Adair was I don't know how to feel about Milo specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like because it seems very much like Adair was very influential on Milo's part. Milo was asexual and Adair had Adair had a rape kink and would frequently rape Milo. Uh
Hmm.
and like he like got Milo to be okay with it beforehand by uh but by basically also uh grooming Milo into it and that's just an example of like the type of influence that Otter had over Milo. And I've also heard reports from people who knew Milo um that like there was reason to believe that Milo was like more innocent than we suspect, or like more less complacent, less complicit than we suspect. But it's just really staggered reports, and I have no idea what the actual
Yeah.
reality there is because like yeah,
There's I can't say too much about it because I'm still trying to verify everything with this guy, but somebody reached out about a incident about Milo having a sort of like road rage incident um, back in I think maybe 23.
uh-huh,
So, and like I'll say more about that when like we actually talk about that and can confirm everything. But between that and then instigating the border shootout, you know, it's there is some reason to believe that Milo, was just as much into the more violent aspects about this as anyone else. But it is also, you know,
yes.
it is also easy to see the sympathy towards Milo's side having
I,
a
I, I I
being
just I
involved
just
with.
don't know
Yeah,
what really went on because
yeah,
like I have a lot of information about like their relationship and like but I don't have enough details to really know what happened.
yeah,
And for a long time I had been like planning on reaching out to Milo or Adair and being like, hey, how are you doing these days? We haven't talked in a long time, you've kind of disappeared. But I was kind of scared of Adair, honestly. Like I was scared that he would like yell at me or call me stupid or something. Uh
yeah,
and well now this.
yeah.
When I heard the news about like people recognized Ophelia first. Like
Mm-hmm.
so the first thing that happened was I got a DM from someone being like, "Hey, this is Ophelia. This is a friend of mine who like got this was a Zizian friend of mine who got involved in this, etc. etc." Then I remembered that I was talking to Ely about this. I Ely mentioned that they had a friend who might have gone to join a Zizco. I was like, hey, is this friend's name Ophelia? And Edie was like, yeah, why? And I sent them the article. And then like Jessica Taylor made a Twitter post about it,
Mm.
and there was a bunch of coverage. And then I hear, wait a second, the name is Teresa Youngblood, right? And then Jessica Taylor, doing her investigative journalism thing, posts an image of Milo's Instagram account, and I'm like, wait a second, that's Otter's girlfriend. And
Yeah,
and then like this was actually before official news of Audio's arrest for murdering uh Curtis Lin came out.
Yeah.
We found out that Curtis Lin was murdered by a suspect who was an Asian male. I was like, wait a second, Audio is an Asian male.
Yeah.
And so we actually got news about Audio being responsible for that before it hit the public. Essentially, we weren't
Mm.
sure, but like
Yeah.
I
A lot
I
of
found it
people had a pretty good
fairly
guess.
likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and just it's been so insane ever since then.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard to square because like Anya was like my first friend in the rationalist community who I could talk to about this stuff, talked about like graphic, AI alignment, EA, topics like these that I was really interested in for a long time. And then, you know, turns out this happens.
Yep. Yeah. It's hard what to. It's definitely hard what to make of it. Um. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, I'm really happy with April nowadays.
That's good.
She's the April, not it, my girlfriend
No,
April,
I know.
not the
Yeah.
other husband.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
But yeah, if you have any further information, uh, or any details you think might be interesting, just reach out to me, obviously. And yeah,
sure,
thank you for coming on.
of course. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. All right. Bye bye.